A man stands alone in front of a fire so massive it took an entire civilization to build it. The flames are tall enough to swallow a palace. The crowd watches, certain they are witnessing the end of a rebel. They throw him in, and the fire does nothing. That moment is in this story. So is a man who preached for 950 years and was heard by almost no one. A boy thrown into a well by his own brothers who would one day hold the fate of an entire nation in his hands. A prophet swallowed by a whale in the middle of the ocean who walked out alive. These are not myths. These are the 25 names Allah chose to preserve in the Quran. Out of 124,000 prophets sent across human history, only 25. And every single one of them carries something that the others don't. The question that almost no one stops to ask is this: why these 25? What is the thread that runs through all of them, from the first man who walked the earth to the final messenger who changed the course of civilization? That thread exists, and once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Adam alayhi salam. There was no world before him, not in any human sense, no cities, no language, no history, just the command of Allah and soil from the earth, gathered by the angels from different regions, mixed with water, shaped into a form, and left for 40 years until it dried like hardened clay. Then Allah gave it a soul, and in that single moment, something entirely new entered existence, a being who could think, choose, err, and return. The angels were commanded to prostrate to Adam. Every one of them did, except Iblis. His refusal was not about strength. It was about arrogance, the belief that his origin was superior, that fire outranked clay. That one act of pride set the template for every form of rejection that would follow across human history. Adam was given something no creature before him had received: knowledge. The names of all things. He was appointed Khalifa, a representative of Allah on this earth. He was given Hawa as his companion, and they lived in a state of ease unlike anything that came after. Then came the test: one tree, one prohibition, one moment of forgetfulness, and they ate from it, both of them, and both of them knew immediately what they had done. What followed was not punishment alone. It was also the first demonstration of something that would define every prophet after Adam, the door of tawbah. Adam repented sincerely. Allah accepted. The Quran records it simply, precisely. He turned to him in mercy, for he is the oft-returning, the most merciful. That acceptance became the foundation. Every human being who came after Adam inherited not just his nature, but his example. That return to Allah is always possible. Adam lived, according to narrations, close to 960 years. He built, he taught, he raised children who would become the first communities on earth. But communities drift, generations pass, memory fades, and the further humanity moved from Adam, the more it moved from what he knew. That drift is what made the next name necessary: Idris alayhi salam. He was the 5th generation from Adam, and he arrived at a moment when the world had already begun to forget. Before him, people wore animal skins. They had no cities organized by design, no written language, no systematic knowledge of the sky above them. Idris changed all of that. Allah gave him 30 suhuf, small scriptures, and with them came something extraordinary. A mind that could penetrate the sciences of his time at a depth no one before him had reached. He was the first to write, the first to use a pen. He studied the movements of celestial bodies with a precision that astonished the people around him. He knew 72 languages and used each one to call its speakers back to the truth. He moved from Babylon to Egypt, building and teaching, carrying the message of Tawhid across regions that had never heard it framed with such clarity. The Quran says something about Idris that it says about almost no one else. It says, "We raised him to a high place." Scholars of tafsir have long reflected on what this means. Many hold that Idris alayhi salam was taken to the heavens without tasting death in the ordinary sense, a fate that places him alongside only one other figure in prophetic history. What exactly awaits him and why Allah chose him for this is a question that the Quran leaves open deliberately. After Idris, time moved, communities grew, and as they grew, they filled the space that revelation had occupied with something else. Idols, figures carved from stone and wood that could neither hear nor harm, elevated into objects of worship simply because people found it easier to bow to something they could see. Nuh alayhi salam. He received prophethood at the age of 50, sent to a people deep in Mesopotamia, the region of present-day Iraq, who had turned entirely away from what Adam and Idris had taught. He called them not once, not for a decade, not for a generation. He called them for 950 years. The Quran records his own words. He said he called them by day and by night, openly and in secret. And they put their fingers in their ears and wrapped themselves in their garments and persisted in arrogance. 950 years. Let that settle for a moment. Most human civilizations have not lasted that long. Nuh alayhi salam preached across a span of time that dwarfs entire empires, and the number of believers remained devastatingly small. His own son rejected him, stood on the far side of the divide, convinced he could climb a mountain and survive what was coming. He could not. When Nuh finally made dua, when he told Allah that not a single disbeliever would remain on earth to mislead others, the response came. Allah commanded him to build a ship in the middle of dry land, without a sea in sight. And as he built, his people mocked him, a prophet turned carpenter, constructing a vessel in the desert. To them, it was the final proof that he had lost his mind. Then the water came, not only from the sky. The Quran says the earth itself opened. Tana, a word that points to a source from below, gushing upward. The flood was not weather, it was a directive. Every pair of creatures that would continue life on earth boarded the ship. The believers boarded, and the rest, including Nuh's own son, standing at the edge of the water, still refusing, were swallowed. The ship came to rest on Mount Judy. 3 sons stepped off, Sam, Ham, and Japheth. From those 3 lines came the Arabs, the Persians, the Assyrians, the Africans, the Egyptians, the Turks, the Greeks, the Chinese, the entire tapestry of humanity as it exists today. This is why scholars gave Nuh alayhi salam a title that only one other prophet in history shares, the second Adam, because after the flood, the human story began again, and it began with a world that had been washed clean, but a world that would not stay that way for long. Hud alayhi salam. From the line of Sam, the son of Nuh, came a people called Ad. They settled in Yemen, in a land of trade winds and prosperous roots. They built, they accumulated. Tall structures rose across their territory, not out of need, but out of pride, as monuments to their own power. The Quran notes this detail with a precision that feels almost surgical. They built on every high place for vanity. Wealth had arrived first, then arrogance followed close behind it. And with arrogance came everything else: injustice, corruption, the slow abandonment of what they once knew to be true. Hud alayhi salam was from among them, not a stranger, not an outsider, one of their own. He stood before his people and told them the plain truth, that the wealth and the towers and the strength they were so proud of would mean nothing if they did not return to Allah. They laughed at him. They said, "Who is stronger than us in power?" The Quran records their arrogance word for word. Allah answered that question with wind, not a storm, not rain, a dry, burning wind that continued for 7 nights and 8 days, relentless, consuming, dismantling every structure and every body that stood in its path. When it was over, nothing remained of Ad except their empty dwellings. Hud alayhi salam and those who believed with him were untouched. He later settled in Mecca and died there, the man who had watched a civilization erase itself because it could not hear the truth from one of its own. Salih alayhi salam. The people of Thamud came after Ad and learned nothing from them. They too were gifted, not just with wealth, but with extraordinary architectural skill. They carved their homes directly into mountains, constructing cities inside rock faces with a precision that still puzzles those who study the remains at Aad and Salih in northwestern Saudi Arabia today. They were technically advanced, settled, powerful, and completely devoted to their idols. Salih alayhi salam called them to Tawheed. They responded with a challenge. They pointed to a massive rock and told him, "If you are truly a prophet, bring a she-camel out of that rock, a specific camel, pregnant, alive." He prayed to Allah, and the camel came. That moment should have ended the argument. A living animal emerging from solid stone, witnessed by the entire community, was not a small sign. The camel's milk alone was enough to feed the whole people without shortage. Allah made it a designated sign. Let her graze freely on Allah's earth and do her no harm, or a painful punishment will seize you. The leaders of Thamud understood exactly what the camel represented. As long as it lived, Salih's influence would grow, their authority would shrink. So they made a decision at night, away from the crowd. They slaughtered it, and in doing so, they did not just kill an animal. They reached into the space between themselves and Allah's mercy and cut the cord deliberately. 3 days. Salih alayhi salam told them they had 3 days left. He and the believers left the city. On the 3rd day, a sound struck from the sky, a single, overwhelming blast, and Thamud was gone. The mountains they had carved so carefully remained. The people inside them did not. Ibrahim alayhi salam, of all the names in the Quran, his is the one that casts the longest shadow. He is called Khalilullah, the close friend of Allah. He is the father of 2 prophetic lines that between them shaped the entire trajectory of monotheism on this earth. And he began as a young man in the city of the Chaldeans, surrounded by idol worship so complete that even his own father carved and sold the idols. While his people celebrated at a festival outside the city, Ibrahim alayhi salam walked into the temple alone. What happened next is recorded in the Quran with almost cinematic clarity. He broke every idol except the largest. He placed the axe around the largest one's neck and waited. When his people returned and demanded to know who had done this, he told them calmly, "Ask the big one. He can speak, can't he?" They had no answer. They knew in that suspended, humiliated moment that their gods could do nothing. But knowledge without willingness to change is not enlightenment. It is just embarrassment. And embarrassment in the powerful turns quickly into anger. They built a fire and threw him into it. The Quran says, "We said, O fire, be coolness and safety upon Ibrahim." He walked out, and still they rejected him. By Allah's command, Ibrahim alayhi salam migrated. He moved through Egypt, through Palestine, carrying his mission across the ancient world. He married Hajar after years without children, and from her came Ismail. Later, from his first wife Sarah came Ishak, 2 sons, 2 prophetic lines. Ismail would become the forefather of the Arabs and of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Ishak would become the forefather of the Israelite prophets. The 2 great rivers of Abrahamic prophethood flowed from the same man. Ibrahim and Ismail built the Kaaba together, laying stone upon stone by Allah's command, making dua as they worked. They performed Hajj, they taught it to others, and then came the test that the Quran calls the manifest trial, a dream in which Ibrahim saw himself sacrificing his son. He told Ismail, and Ismail, still a young man with everything ahead of him, said simply, "Father, do as you are commanded. You will find me, if Allah wills, among the patient." The knife was placed. Allah stopped him. A great animal was sent in place of his son, and that moment of complete surrender became what Muslims across the earth commemorate every year on Aad al-Adha, not as a ritual, but as a memory of what it looks like when a human being gives everything back to the one who gave it. Ibrahim alayhi salam passed away in Jerusalem at the age of 175. Lut alayhi salam. He was Ibrahim's nephew, and he migrated with him from Babylon before being sent as a prophet to the people of Sodom, a city in the region of present-day Jordan and the Dead Sea. Their sin is named in the Quran directly, but what the Quran emphasizes is not merely the act, it is the system. The people of Sodom had built a social structure around oppression. They blocked roads, they kidnapped travelers, they forced what they practiced onto others. The Quran records it precisely. You approach men, block the roads, and commit shameful acts in your gatherings. Lut alayhis salam warned them. They threatened to expel him. Then 3 strangers arrived, appearing as young men, and stayed as his guests. The city gathered at his door. Lut was afraid, but the visitors revealed themselves as angels. They told him to leave before dawn with whoever believed. He did. By morning, the city was overturned. Stones marked with divine command rained down, and the civilization of Sodom, which had mistaken collective sin for collective safety, ceased to exist. What happened next in this prophetic chain moves the story from the Arabian Peninsula toward Egypt, toward a boy in a well, a slave in a palace, and a dream that would take decades to become real. Ismail alayhis salam. He was left in a valley with no water, no vegetation, no other human being in sight, just his mother Hajar and the command of Allah. Ibrahim alayhis salam placed them there and began to walk away. Hajar called after him, "Did Allah command you to do this?" He said, "Yes." She said, "Then He will not abandon us." That trust is what Zamzam is built on. When the water ran out and the infant Ismail cried from thirst, Hajar ran between the hills of Safa and Marwa 7 times, searching for any sign of relief. She found nothing with her eyes, but beneath the feet of her child, water burst from the ground. A spring that has not stopped flowing in thousands of years. Pilgrims drink from it today. It is still there. Ismail alayhis salam grew up in Makkah, raised among the tribe of Jurhum, who settled near the water source. He became a prophet sent to his people, teaching them Tawheed, showing them how to perform Salah, how to give Zakah. He was known for his skill in archery and horsemanship. It is recorded in Hadith literature that he revived and established the Arabic language as a living, structured tongue, a detail whose weight becomes clear when you remember that the final revelation would descend in that same language centuries later. He is buried near the Kaaba, in the area known as the Hijr. So close to the house, he helped his father build that performing tawaf around the Kaaba means, for those who understand, walking around the grave of a prophet. Ishak alayhis salam, the second son of Ibrahim, born to Sarah when both his parents were far beyond the age where such a thing seemed possible. Allah announced his coming to Ibrahim through the angels who visited on their way to Sodom. And Sarah, overhearing the news, laughed in astonishment. A son at her age. The Quran records her reaction and the angel's response with a gentleness that makes the moment feel immediate even now. Ishak alayhis salam was sent as a prophet to the people of Canaan, the land that corresponds to present-day Palestine. He continued the mission of his father, spreading the religion of Tawheed across the region. He was the father of Yakub, who would himself become a prophet. The Quran describes Ishak as a righteous servant, truthful and devoted. He passed away at the age of 120 and was buried in Hebron alongside his father Ibrahim alayhis salam, the two of them resting in the same earth. Yakub alayhis salam, his name means the one who follows at the heel, and his title is Israel, which is why his descendants carry that name across history. He had 12 sons. From those 12 sons came the 12 tribes of Bani Israel. He was sent as a prophet to the land of Canaan, calling his people back to Allah with the patience that would become the defining mark of his character. Because patience was what his life demanded. The Quran introduces the trial of Yakub through his love for one son above the others, a love so visible that it became the seed of jealousy inside his household. That jealousy would cost him decades. It would cost him his sight eventually, from the prolonged grief of separation. But when his sons came to him in his sorrow and his loss, he did not turn his complaint toward them or toward fate. The Quran records exactly what he said. I only express my sorrow and sadness to Allah, not performance, not bitterness, a man rooting his pain directly to the only place it could actually be received. On his deathbed, he gathered his sons and asked them who they would worship after him. They answered with the declaration that would echo through every prophetic generation that followed.
We will worship the God of our fathers, Ibrahim, Ismail, and Ishak.
He died in Egypt, but by his own will he was carried to Palestine and buried beside his father Ishak. Yusuf alayhi salam. His story occupies an entire surah of the Quran, the only prophet given that singular dedication. Allah called it the best of stories, and it earns that title not through spectacle, but through the slow, relentless pressure of a life that kept breaking and kept holding. He was a child when he told his father about the dream. 11 stars, the sun and the moon, all prostrating to him. Yakub recognized immediately what it meant and told him to keep it secret.
Do not tell your brothers about this dream, lest they plot against you.
The dream was too large. The envy it would ignite was too dangerous. He was right, and the precaution still wasn't enough. His brothers threw him into a well. A caravan pulled him out and sold him into slavery in Egypt. The chief minister of Egypt, known as Aziz, bought him and brought him into his household. There Yusuf alayhi salam grew in character, in trustworthiness, in the kind of inner composure that comes from a person who knows exactly who they are and whose they are. When Aziz's wife tried to seduce him, he ran. When she fabricated the story and had him imprisoned, he went to prison. And in prison he kept preaching Tawheed to whoever would listen, interpreting dreams with a precision that even the other inmates noticed. Years passed inside those walls. Then the king of Egypt had a dream that no one could decode. 7 fat cows devoured by 7 thin ones, 7 green stalks beside 7 dried ones. The interpretation was not in the palace, it was in the prison. Yusuf was brought out. 7 years of abundance, he said, followed by 7 years of famine. Prepare now, store what you can. Egypt listened, and Egypt survived, and the man who survived it to guide them was the same boy his brothers had sold for a handful of coins. When the famine spread across the region, his brothers came to Egypt seeking grain, not knowing who the minister in front of them was. Yusuf recognized them immediately, the story that unfolded across several visits, the tests he placed before them, the moment he kept his younger brother Binyamin, and finally the moment he revealed himself. All of it moves with the precision of something designed, not accidental, because it was. Every betrayal, every cell, every year of waiting had been part of a path. When he finally revealed himself, his brothers braced for what they deserved. He told them, "There is no blame on you today. May Allah forgive you." His father's sight returned when the shirt of Yusuf touched his face. The family came to Egypt. The dream from childhood, 11 stars, the sun, the moon, was fulfilled exactly. And at the peak of everything he had been given, Yusuf alayhi salam made a dua recorded in the Quran that strips away every illusion about what he actually wanted. My Lord, you have given me power and taught me the interpretation of events. Let me die as a Muslim and join me with the righteous. Shu'aib alayhi salam. After the vertical intensity of Yusuf's story, the prophetic chain moves to a man known across Islamic tradition as the Khatib ul-Anbiya, the orator of the prophets. He was sent to the people of Madian, in the region between present-day Jordan and northwestern Saudi Arabia, and also to the people of Issa. Both communities were merchant peoples. Both had the same disease. They cheated in weights, in measurements, in the basic arithmetic of exchange that holds communities together. They had built prosperous trade networks on systematized fraud. Shu'aib alayhi salam stood before them and made the case with clarity. Give full measure and weight with justice. Do not reduce people's belongings. Do not spread corruption on the earth. Their response was contempt. They said to him, "Does your Salah command you to make us leave what our fathers worshipped, or to stop doing whatever we want with our wealth?" The arrogance in that question is almost elegant, reducing a prophetic warning to a question of personal freedom and inherited custom. Shu'aib warned them of what was coming. The people of Madian were seized by an earthquake. The people of Issa were destroyed by a canopy of scorching fire that descended from a sky they had mistaken for shade. Shu'aib and the believers were untouched. He returned to Madian afterward, carrying the mission forward. It was also Shu'aib alayhi salam who received a wandering fugitive at his door, a man fleeing Egypt after an accidental killing, exhausted, alone, and about to meet the most consequential figure in the entire chain of Bani Israel. Musa alayhi salam. He was born into a death sentence. Pharaoh had been warned through his own soothsayers, through the anxiety that power always generates around its own succession, that a child from Bani Israel would one day dismantle everything he had built. So he issued the order. Every newborn male from that community would be killed. The killing went on, and then Musa arrived. Allah spoke directly to his mother, not through a prophet, not through an angel bearing formal revelation, directly, in the way that Allah speaks to the hearts of those he chooses to use. Breastfeed him. When you fear for him, place him in the river. Do not fear, do not grieve. We will return him to you and make him one of the prophets. She placed her infant son in a basket on the Nile. The basket drifted to the palace. Pharaoh's wife Asiya, a woman whose faith would become its own story, whose name appears in Islamic tradition as one of the greatest women who ever lived, saw the child and felt something that overrode every instinct of political survival. She told Pharaoh, "Do not kill him. He may be of benefit to us, or we may adopt him as a son." Pharaoh agreed, and the boy, who would one day face him across the most dramatic confrontation in prophetic history, grew up inside his palace, eating at his table, sleeping under his roof. When Musa alayhi salam was grown, he witnessed an Egyptian striking a man from Bani Israel and intervened. The blow he delivered killed the Egyptian, unintentionally but irreversibly. He left Egypt and walked to Madian, where a tired man sitting by a well saw two women waiting at the edge of the crowd, unable to water their flock because they were women alone and the men around them would not make space. Musa helped them without being asked. Their father, Shu'aib alayhi salam, according to the majority of scholars, invited him in and eventually gave him one of his daughters in marriage. Musa alayhi salam spent years in Madian. He was not idle. He was being prepared. Then, on the way back toward Egypt, he saw fire on a mountain and walked toward it. What he found was not fire in any ordinary sense. It was a call. Allah spoke to him from the blessed spot and told him something that no human being had ever been told from that mountain before. "I am Allah. There is no God but me. So worship me." He was given two miracles as signs. His staff became a living serpent when he cast it. His hand emerged radiant and luminous when he drew it from his chest. With these, he was sent back to Egypt, back to Pharaoh. The confrontation that followed was not just political. It was a collision between two entirely different claims about the nature of reality. Pharaoh declared himself divine. Musa alayhi salam stood in front of him and declared the opposite, calmly, without theater, carrying the weight of prophethood. Pharaoh called it magic. He assembled every skilled magician in Egypt for a public contest designed to humiliate and silence. When the magicians threw their ropes and staffs, the illusions were convincing enough to make the crowd afraid. Then Musa cast his staff. What swallowed every illusion was not another illusion. The magicians saw the difference immediately. They fell in prostration. They believed. Pharaoh had them killed. Allah then sent a sequence of signs upon Egypt: floods, locusts, lice, frogs, blood, each one a targeted dismantling of what Pharaoh claimed to control. Each time, Pharaoh promised to release Bani Israel if the sign was lifted. Each time, the sign lifted. Each time, he broke the promise. This pattern repeated until the final command came: take Bani Israel and leave at night. Pharaoh pursued with his full army. Bani Israel reached the sea and stopped, water ahead, soldiers behind. The Quran records what Musa alayhi salam said in that moment with a tranquility that is almost impossible to explain rationally. "My Lord is with me. He will guide me." Allah told him to strike the sea with his staff. It split into 12 dry paths, one for each tribe. They crossed, the army followed, and the sea returned. Pharaoh drowned, but Allah said something about his body that carries its own weight. Today we will preserve you, so that you may be a sign for those who come after you. A body preserved as evidence, a detail that has intrigued historians and scholars for centuries. Musa alayhi salam was then called to Mount Tur, where he received the Torah across 40 nights. While he was gone, a man named Samiri led Bani Israel into the worship of a golden calf. When Musa returned and saw what had happened, his grief was total. He had left his people for 40 nights and they had dismantled everything. Samiri was punished, the people repented, and Musa alayhi salam continued, patient with a community that complained constantly, that tested him repeatedly, that could not seem to hold on to gratitude for longer than the distance between one miracle and the next. He was never allowed to enter the Holy Land. Allah told him, "It is forbidden to them for 40 years. He died in the desert." The Quran does not name his grave. Hadith indicate his body was placed near Bayt al-Maqdis. Harun alayhi salam was Musa's brother, a prophet in his own right, appointed by Allah's direct response to Musa's own request. When Musa asked for a companion in the mission, Allah gave him Harun. He had gifts Musa described openly, a clearer tongue, a greater ease in speech. Where Musa carried the force of prophethood like a boulder, Harun carried it like water, finding the path through and around rather than breaking through directly. He died before Musa in the desert, before the entry into the Holy Land that neither of them was permitted to see. Dawood alayhi salam arrived into a different kind of challenge. By his time, Bani Israel had kings, they had armies, and they faced Jalut, Goliath, a warrior whose reputation alone was enough to make soldiers hesitate. Dawood was young, not yet a commander, but he stepped forward and killed Jalut, and in that single act a kingdom was placed in motion. He became king of Bani Israel, established Jerusalem as his capital, and ruled with a justice the Quran affirms. He was given the Zabur and a voice so powerful that the mountains and birds joined his tasbih by Allah's command. He could shape iron with his bare hands, no fire, no forge. He fasted every other day, stood in Qiyam every other night. The Quran says he was a devoted servant, one who constantly turned back to Allah. Sulaiman alayhi salam inherited the kingdom and then exceeded it in ways that no ruler before or after him could match. The wind carried him and his armies. The jinn built for him palaces, fortresses, deep-sea structures, statues. Animals spoke to him. A hoopoe bird brought him intelligence from a civilization he had not yet reached. The people of Saba, led by a queen named Bilqis, were worshipping the sun. Sulaiman sent her a letter. The Quran records its opening. It is from Sulaiman, and it begins with Bismillahir-Rahman-Ir-Rahim. She came. Her throne was transported to his palace before she could blink, moved across an impossible distance by one who had knowledge of the scripture. When she arrived and saw the palace floor, clear glass overflowing water, so perfect she lifted her garment, thinking she was about to step into a pool. She understood she was standing before something that her sun worship had never prepared her for. She declared her submission to Allah. Sulaiman alayhi salam died standing. Leaning on his staff, he passed from this world, while the jinn continued working around him, not knowing he was gone. It was only when a creature of the earth ate through the staff and it gave way that his body fell, and the jinn realized in that moment that they had never possessed the knowledge of the unseen they imagined themselves to have. After Sulaiman, the prophetic chain moved through Ilyas, Al-Yasa, Ayub, Dhul-Kifl, each one sent to Bani Israel in their seasons of forgetting, each one calling them back from the edge of whatever new form of straying had taken hold. Ayub alayhi salam endured what almost no human body or spirit could endure: years of illness, loss of wealth, loss of children, with only his wife remaining beside him, and he never broke. He only turned to Allah and said, "Adversity has touched me, and you are the most merciful of the merciful." A spring appeared beneath his feet. He drank and washed and was healed. Then came Yunus alayhi salam, sent to Nineveh, the capital of the Assyrian Empire, where he preached for years to a people who would not listen. He left before he received permission from Allah to do so. A storm at sea, lots drawn 3 times, his name appearing each time. He was cast into the water, and a great fish swallowed him whole. Inside 3 layers of darkness, the darkness of the fish, the darkness of the sea, the darkness of the night. He made a dua that the Quran preserves with exact precision. There is no God but you. Glory be to you. Indeed, I have been among the wrongdoers. The fish brought him to the shore, weak, exposed, placed under the shade of a plant by Allah's mercy. And he returned to Nineveh to find that his people, feeling the weight of what was coming after he left, had repented together, all of them. They are the only community in the Quran recorded to have been saved as a whole through collective tawbah. Zakariah alayhi salam served in Bayt al-Maqdis as a carpenter and as the guardian of Maryam. He watched her with quiet astonishment, provisions appearing in her room that had no earthly explanation. When he asked her where they came from, she told him, "They are from Allah." That answer became the catalyst for a dua he made in private. An old man, a wife who had never conceived, asking for a son, not from desperation. From the understanding that the same Allah who sent provisions to Maryam without a source could give a child without conditions. Yahya alayhi salam was his answer. Yahya alayhi salam was given wisdom while still a child. He lived with complete devotion, calling Bani Israel back to the Torah, supporting Issa alayhi salam when he came. He was martyred because he refused to validate a king's unlawful marriage, a prophet killed not on a battlefield, but because he would not bend a single ruling of Allah for the comfort of power. Isa alayhi salam was born without a father. Maryam, a woman known for her purity and worship, was told by Jibril that she would carry a child. And when she asked how, since no man had touched her, the answer came, "This is easy for your Lord." He spoke from the cradle, defending his mother before a crowd that was ready to condemn her. He was given the Injil. He healed the sick, gave sight to the blind, raised the dead, all by Allah's permission, never by his own power, a distinction the Quran insists upon. When the people who rejected him sought to have him killed, Allah raised him, and the Quran is precise. They did not kill him, and they did not crucify him. He was lifted, and he will return. And then the final name, the last in the chain, the one sent not to a single people or a single region, but to all of humanity and every generation that would come after him until the end of time. Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was born in Makkah in the year 570. An orphan before birth, his father Abdullah died before he arrived. His mother Amina died when he was 6. He was raised by his grandfather, then his uncle Abu Talib. In a city built on idol worship and tribal pride, he was known by everyone simply as Al-Amin, the trustworthy. He never bowed to an idol, not once, not even before the revelation came. At 40, in the cave of Hira, Jibril alayhi salam came. The first word delivered was not a doctrine, not a law, not a list of commands. It was a single imperative: read. He could not read. He had never been taught. But the revelation that followed across 23 years would become the Quran, a book whose linguistic depth, internal consistency, and prophetic precision has not been matched or approached by any human production before or since. The Quran itself places the challenge openly. Bring a single surah like it. No one has. The challenge still stands. He called his people to Tawheed. They called him a poet, a madman, a magician, every label except the one that was true. The believers were tortured. He was boycotted, stoned at Ta'if. He lost Khadija radiallahu anha and Abu Talib in the same year. 2 anchors gone in the same season, which he named the Year of Sorrow. Then came the night journey, Isra and Mi'raj, from Makkah to Jerusalem to the 7 heavens and back, in a single night, returning with the gift of Salah. At 53, he made hijrah to Medina. The Islamic calendar begins at that moment, not at his birth, not at the first revelation, but at the migration, the moment the community became something that could carry the message forward. In Medina, he built the first masjid, established a state, made treaties, fought battles, and continued to receive revelation until the religion was complete. At his final Hajj, standing before more than 140,000 companions, Allah revealed the last completion. "Today I have perfected your religion for you." He passed away in 632 in the room of Aisha radiallahu anha, his head resting in her lap. He was 63 years old. He left behind no palace, no throne, no accumulated wealth. He left behind two things, the Quran and his Sunnah. And he said, recorded in Hadith, that there would come a generation who believed in him without ever having seen him. He called them his brothers. 25 names, across thousands of years, across continents, across civilizations that rose and collapsed and rose again, each one carrying the same message, the same essential truth that the first man knew in the garden and that the last prophet sealed in the desert of Arabia. The message never changed, only the people receiving it did. And through all of it, across every refusal and every acceptance, every flood and every fire, every prison and every palace, the same thread held, the thread of a creator who kept sending messengers because he did not abandon the ones he made.